Alright everybody, I thought we'd do a quick video here. I've got a show I'm prepping for tomorrow, and we've got a little bit of a different input situation, some limitations that we're having to figure out, and I just wanted to show you how I'm going to set this show up. So we have a drum kit, and because of sound ordinance laws, our performance are going to have to be limited to 95 dB during our performance. So the way we're going to get around that is we're using the DW flat drums. I'm not exactly sure what they're called, but here's a photo of those. So we're using those drum shells because they do have an acoustic quality that we can mic up and definitely use, but we're going to augment our drums with a SPDS drum trigger. So I have my kick, snare, two toms, two overheads. They're going to be mic'd up. And then I have my two channels for our drum triggers, effectively. Then we have a bass DI. One song, unfortunately just one song, has a mandolin, so we have to use an entire input for one song. Then we have 4 vocal channels. And then we're going to have our tracks and our click that's fed to the performer's in-ears to keep time with the tracks. And we're using the Behringer 16 channel rack. So I only have 16 XLR inputs. And as you can see, I filled up my first 8 with all of my drums, including my triggers. And my second 8 are filled up with 4 vocals, 1 mandolin wasted track, 1 bass DI, and 2 channels for tracks. So how do we get around this? With just a little bit of creative patching. So the X rack, as well as the M32 X32, has 6 1/4-inch auxiliary inputs on the back of it. And what we're going to do is we're going to run, our guitar player has a Kemper profile he's using, so we're going to run a 1/4-inch into auxiliary 3 and 4. And we're going to run keyboards into auxiliary 1 and 2 1/4-inch. So then, when we get set up in our routing page, go over here to routing, and we're going to have local inputs through 1 through 8, 9 through 16. That'll take care of our first 2 banks of inputs. And then we're going to have our auxiliaries set up to auxiliary N, and that's going to allow us to run those 1/4-inch inputs, because these 2 rows of channels are not going to be available to us on the X rack, because again the X rack only has 16 XLR inputs. So then the question is, I want to record my live performance into Pro Tools and my DAW. So I need to tell my card where it's going to receive its inputs to record in the DAW. So we're going to go ahead and tell it to do its first 8 channels on local 1 through 8, its second 8 channels on local 9 through 16, and then we're going to use this third bank for our auxiliary N channels 1 through 6, plus the Talkback mic. If for some reason I wanted to record my Talkback mic, I could. And if you're in a super pinch, and actually in this case I could use the Talkback mic for my mandolin input. We could simply run the DI for the mandolin into the Talkback mic section and assign that Talkback to the main left and right, and use the Talkback section for our mandolin input if we wanted to. Now, because the Talkback mic does not have any EQ or dynamic section, we would not have any EQ or compression control over that mandolin DI going into the Talkback XLR. So if we wanted to be real clever, we could assign the Talkback mic, in this case the mandolin DI, to bus 16, and in bus 16 we have EQ and dynamics that we can use on our buses. So we can simply route the Talkback mic to bus 16, make sure bus 16 is assigned to the main stereo left and right, and now we could have control over our mandolin on bus 16 and still end up with EQ and compression. But we're not going to do that for this show. It's just a cool way that you could utilize your Talkback mic. So when they advertise the M32 X32 as a 40 channel input, technically you have 41. Alright, so back to our routing. So we're on our card page and we're going to tell the card to record local 1 through 8, 9 through 16, auxiliary 1 through 6, and that's all we need to capture our performance tomorrow in Pro Tools in our DAW. And I've just got a quick auto example showing you guys how that's going to look on the console. So we have our drums, bass guitar, our 4 vocal channels, and then down on our auxiliary channels we have our keyboards and our guitars. Now, when I'm mixing, because I don't want to have to jump between these 2 pages to get to all my instruments, I'm going to utilize my DCA so I can mix just from this side of the board. So I've assigned my drums to DCA 1. I've assigned our trigger pad to DCA 2. We have our bass on DCA 3. And now, under guitar, you'll notice none of these are blue because our guitar is not going in there. Our guitar is down here on the auxiliary channels. So we're going to assign auxiliary 3 and 4 to DCA 4, and now we have 1 fader to control our guitar channels. And then back on DCA 5 we have our 4 vocal mics. DCA 6 we have our tracks, and again on DCA 7 I want to have my keyboards. So we'll go back over to auxiliary inputs on the left hand side of the console, and we'll assign auxiliary 1 and 2 to DCA 7. So now when I'm running my show, I have 1 fader for my drums, 1 fader for my drum triggers, 1 fader for my bass, 1 fader for my guitar, 1 fader for vocals. This song doesn't have any tracks playing, but we have 1 fader for tracks and 1 fader for our keyboards. And then my last DCA, DCA 8, is reserved for my effects, volume. So I have bus 13 and 14 assigned to DCA 8, and that gives me 1 fader for my effects. There you have it, guys. I hope you find that helpful. If you have any questions, leave a comment. If you guys like the video content you're seeing here, make sure you hit the subscribe button. I will have more videos coming shortly.